Let me tell you about this guy.
I'll tell you about this fucker right here.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Mike the Tyke, right?
Break the type.
Mike the Tyke, Mike the little guy. Back in your olden days, right? Back in the prehistoric era.
I'm only 5'7". That's like 5'10" in wrestling measurements. So I've always been a little guy.
I feel it's my duty as a white Christian man,
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
right? A white Anglo-Saxon Christian man, to ask you what it was like when you were 13.
Oh. 13.
Back in what the white Christian man would consider the prime years.
All right. 13 prime years. 13, that would be, for me, 1983.
All of you get out of your head, you disgusting bastards.
1983, I lived in Long Beach, Mississippi.
Yeah, long ass fucking time ago.
Yeah, so I was 8th, 9th grade.
Long Beach, Mississippi.
Yeah.
I grew up in Florida.
I'm not sure what that has to do with Mississippi, but okay.
What's your point?
Alabama.
You said beach. I thought you said Miami and not Mississippi. It's a new point at this point. Continue.
So,
Florida. It makes sense.
it was actually, you know how people say like high school was the best times of their lives? For me, it was like junior high was the best time of my life. High school was a major disaster. I almost didn't survive, but junior high was great. So 1983, I was like this 4'10", 90-pound dude, right? 13 years old, but I was on the football team, relatively popular because I was on the football team. I was not an excellent football player by any stretch of the imagination. But in Mississippi, if you're on the football team, you have a certain level of popularity by default.
Okay.
Right? So I had default level of popularity. It wasn't good looks or charming disposition that got me there. And I had so much freedom because my dad was in the Navy, so he'd be gone for like 6 months at a time aboard ship and that type of thing, and then come back, and then he might be gone for 2 weeks and that type of thing. My mom worked a full-time job. She was a bookkeeper and translator for the Catholic Diocese charitable organization. So,
oh, good. So she got the joke that I was making. Okay.
Well, she wasn't Catholic, but so there's a Vietnamese community down on the coast, and when something happened, you know, police or doctors or EMTs were involved, my mom would get a phone call and she'd have to go out to there and start translating. So they can, you know, is she allergic to anything? Yeah, just penicillin. Oh, okay, we won't give her this one then, right? That type of thing. Or a birth, you know?
You were in Long Beach, Mississippi. They were like, oh, give her that one. Get her out of here.
No, because, you know...
Go back to your land.
There's a large Vietnamese community down there.
It's not what I would expect.
Well, because you had the Biloxi, the Air Force Base, Keystone Air Force Base in Biloxi, okay, the CB base in Gulfport, and 83, you know, all these guys had come back in the 70s from the Vietnam War. They had Vietnamese wives and mixed race children, which, you know, that's me. I was actually born in Vietnam.
Yeah, you guys think we didn't win the war? Look at where all your wives are.
That is where I could say something really mean and get us canceled forever, but so I won't.
Oh,
but
yeah, it's fine. We can edit it out if we have to.
All right. So I was like, yeah, in Vietnam, this is where all your MIAs are.
Clip it. That's staying in. First TikTok.
So, gosh, what points? Like,
that's where.
So we had a large Vietnamese community there, and so again, and no phones, and so we kind of like we were raised by a group of families and not just mom and dad, and so basically anybody my mom knew had the right to spank us, and then tell my mom why I got spanked by them, so that my mom could spank me again for embarrassing her by doing this and causing me to get spanked.
Yeah, anyone like Asian, Hispanic, your parents get off on that. They're like, oh yeah, beat our shit. That's just what we like to do. It's our new favorite pastime.
Well, if we go culture to culture, I would argue that I'm not overly. I don't have a lot of experience with the Mexican culture or the Hispanic culture, but Asian culture. I look at the Asian culture and I look at the American culture and how the children are raised, and there's a reason why there's one racial group that's infatuated with Kardashians and reality TV, and the other ones are not allowed to go to college despite having the 4.0 GPAs and the 1600 SAT scores, right? Because we're overrepresented. All right. So if I had to choose between being pop famous and stupid or pop illiterate and genius, I'm running with the genius. And if it takes a few swats on the bottom and threat of bodily harm to get there,
so I didn't say they were wrong. I'm also into it.
That tells me so much.
Are you gonna spank me?
No, I have people for that.
Oh God, that's worse. That's so much worse as a parent.
But there's a lot of freedom in the sense that she was working, she'd be called out whenever, so that'd be mornings I'd wake up and my mom's already gone, right? So it's like kind of fend for yourself. But in the fending for yourself, it's like, okay, what am I going to have for breakfast today? Well, we got bread. I had some strawberry jam, bananas, an apple. We got creative, whatever you felt like. But we got to explore our neighborhoods. Well, walked. People think, oh, walking sucks, but we got to walk everywhere. I mean, ride our bicycles, that type of thing. I rode my parents didn't find out about this till I was a grown-ass adult, but I rode my bicycle from Long Beach, Mississippi to Edgewater Mall in Biloxi, which is like 14 miles away. And we did it along the Highway 90.
No one that knows me can beat me here.
So as long as we, didn't embarrass the family, didn't do anything stupid that got us in trouble.
Yeah, your honor.
Yeah, our honor. We kept the honor. It was free game. In the summer times, since we lived on the coast, my dad would give me like $1 the first day of summer, tell me to go buy some bait shrimp, and because I love fishing. I take the $1, buy some bait shrimp, go to the pier, have the crab nets with me. I have no bait for the crab nets, but I can catch a fish, use the first fish to bait the crab net, throw that in there. So now I'm crabbing and fishing at the same time. And then I'd end up collecting the crabs and the fish, and then I'd sell some to the market that's at the edge of the pier. Actually, it's more like trade, because I'd give them the stuff and they'd give me more bait shrimp.
Right.
So I'd take that $1 and it'd last me all summer. It's just because I was able to negotiate.
Trade it back and forth. And all that stuff.
And it kept me occupied. I didn't go to jail. So when I could do things like that, everything was good as freedom, and I learned a lot and talked with strangers, and even got
in
candy.
Your van a few times.
No, never got in the van. Got candy from them. Had some lunch. It was
got in the van a few times. Woke up in Nam. It was a wild experience.
So yeah, it was great. What was 13 like for you?
So 2011, I believe, when I was in 8th grade.
Should the Asian guy do the math for you to make sure it's right?
Yeah, you should probably check my math. Part of what you were talking was I was having trouble like thinking about it, so I had to look it all up and figure out. I'm like, oh, where was I at when I was 13? Where will you be when diarrhea strikes? Um, so 13 for me, so 8th grade. So in my what you call junior high in Florida, they called it middle school, right? Same shit. So when I was in middle school, my mom was a teacher, and me and my sister
We're in Florida.
in St. Cloud, Kissimmee area,
Okay.
suburbs of Orlando
Yep.
area, right? So my mom was a teacher at a elementary middle school,
I'm sorry.
and and so me and my sister actually went to the same school that she was teaching at, right? It was just much more convenient. A win for me. I didn't have to take the bus. So I had to take the bus a lot in elementary school before we lived in that area, and obviously took the bus in high school. So all throughout middle school, I got to get away with not taking the bus. So thank God there. And B, it's just more convenient, right? Especially for her, single parent. It's like, oh, we just go to the same school, and then we all go back home together, right? So my life was, I wouldn't say the same type of freedom, right?
Sounds like you're attached to the hem of her skirt
Yeah, but not. So
because she didn't wear a skirt.
no, because my mom let us be very independent. She wasn't like all over us, right? The only reason why we went to that school is she didn't make us, right? She wasn't like, oh, you have to come to this place with me. She was like, oh, do you just want to go here? It'll, you have your options, right? You have your choice. And that's what we chose. We were always a close family. And so it was like, cool, like I get to go there. And it was interesting, kind of found out through going to the same school with her, there was actually this like whole like little gang basically at this school of like teachers' kids, right? So
is that like pastor kids? They're the worst kids.
right? Yeah, it's like pastor kids, but they're not like the pastor's kids. Wink, wink. Like
TKs and PKs.
Yeah. So basically in 8th grade, I most of my friend group actually was this other group of kids that all had teachers and parents that were at the school. So our type of freedom was like being able to do things at the school that nobody else got to do. Right?
Okay.
So like after school, because the parents they call it like, doing teacher duty basically. So they would have to go and do like car riders and help out with that, or like bus riders, or, basically like watch the kids leaving the gate at the school with the ones that are like walking home, whatever like the duty is, right? Or they would have like after school like staff meetings, right? So all of us teacher kids would basically like run amok throughout the school, essentially, and running down the hallways. They had like, in like the nurse's office and stuff, they had like wheelchairs and stuff like that for in case a kid got hurt and they needed one. We would take the wheelchairs out and go ride them through the hallways and go up and down the elevators and all of this stuff, like crazy right? Like we would go to like the elementary school playground and just around out there and all of that stuff. We literally just roamed the entire campus, and nobody would say because we were the teachers' kids. Everybody knew who we were. And in almost any classroom, first of all, we couldn't be like bad, right? Because in any classroom, it would be like, you want me to call your mother? So we weren't ever bad, but in any classroom, we got away with so much because everybody knew us, right? I had many times where I went to class and I had teachers just be like, hey, can you go into the teacher's lounge and like go take this $1 and go buy me this thing from like the vending machine in there and all of that stuff. And had relationships with like the principal and all of that stuff. And so a lot of my time in 8th grade was like the little freedoms like that in like a school that like nobody gets to experience that like we all got to do. The other part of it too is my best friend and I, we roamed our neighborhood at the time, right? So we didn't necessarily ride our bikes 14 miles per se, right? Or something like that. But we when I was growing up, we would ride our bikes from St. Cloud wasn't very big, but from one end of town to the other. We would take whatever little money that we had like scraped up and go ride our bikes to McDonald's and like get a burger and eat lunch or whatever. Ride to his house that was across town. Ride back to my house. Like, we roamed quite a bit, and for the most part, when I was 13, I don't think I got a cell phone until I was 14. So when I was 13, I didn't have the cell phone at the time. So we were just kind of running around, and it was whatever. So I had a similar experience, not quite the same. It didn't go as far, but we kind of roamed around the town. And honestly, I had fun being a teacher's kid, like doing all that shit in a school that nobody gets to do, going and playing in the gym, like playing basketball and shit like that, like just because I felt like it. Rather than it being like only this set time frame and all that stuff was fun.
How many kids had cell phones when you were 13?
Quite a bit. Yeah, quite a few. I would say most kids I knew. So I shouldn't say I didn't have a cell phone. I had like a prepaid, like really, really stupid phone with just the numbers and those stupid 3 letters that are, I don't know how you guys ever learned to type on those because those things.
A, B, C, like R is like 1.
Yeah. So I had one of those just for an emergency, but it was like prepaid. We didn't have unlimited minutes or anything like that. It was just for emergency calling or texting to let my mom that we know we got home okay when we were like out, right? But other than that, I didn't really have a cell phone, but most kids that I knew did. Then they had like full on smartphones, right? It wasn't just like the rinky dink, like, what I had.
Yeah, there were times when I was 13 where I forgot to bring the key to the house. I'll tell you what.
I'd be the latchkey kid and not have the keys.
I learned how to break into houses and pick locks. It's like I learned which windows to not lock. Climbing through, like I'm going to leave this one locked because I can hop onto the air conditioner and then reach to the windowsill and crawl the rest of the way through. So it's interesting because you did seem to have. How about evenings? Like, did you go to like football games or anything like that?
No, but I wasn't really big into sports. I was really into my socks. Those things had this nice curve, and oh man, they just did a certain thing for me,
Oh my god, I was into sports, so I played football, and
oh, you don't want to go down my path?
I am not going down that path. I played.
Sorry, Mom.
And my parents are too busy. I don't think my dad ever went to one of my football games. Mm-hmm. Cry. He's sad now. I wasn't very good, so I don't really blame him for not going. He was like, "Oh, that's my kid." I mean, if you're 4'10", 90 pounds playing football and in like 8th and 9th grade, you're not going to be an NFL player. Let's just put it that way.
I think you chose the wrong sport.
There's always been this part of me that, and maybe because I was 4'10" and 90 pounds, but I had to prove myself to be the toughest kid. All right, so it's like
spite does amazing things.
It's like, so they're like, you're too small to do this, you're too little to do that. It's like, just because of that, now I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
All right. And so that was, and I love football though, but that was one of the driving forces of me playing football. It's like, it's too hard for me. No, it's not. You can hit me as hard as you want, and I'm going to get up every time, except for that once when I woke up in an ambulance.
So I ran track when I was in middle school, but high school is really where I got out of like the sports. I was more into tech, and things revolved around tech or the trade that I was learning. So my high school offered a dual program where your first 2 years was only like your high school classes, and they set it up like as if you had semesters in college, right? So you take four classes as like a block schedule. You would do the whole year in a semester, and then you would do the same thing in the following semester, right, for different classes. And then your last 2 years, you would only have classes half the day, and then you would take a trade, right? So they offered automotive, HVAC, electrical, computer programming, nursing, like all of these different things, activities, right? Culinary that you could do. And so a lot of my high school time was spent on, I worked, went to school, and then focused on like the trade that I was doing, which was HVAC, right? And focused on being really good at that and basically trying to outprove, because we would sit in these classes. The trade school was also a like adult learning center, or like,
So you went one of them large smart schools.
it wasn't large at all. It was like 900 kids. It was very small, but it was connected to an adult like learning center. So they partnered together, and basically you would go and sit there and learn the trades like with the adults, essentially, right? Your last 2 years of high school.
Okay.
So my whole time spent in like HVAC was basically just trying to outwork and outprove the adults that I was with. And that's what I spent my time doing. And that's kind of where like a lot of my competitiveness in my career and like work ethic came from, was that, because I was like, there's all these adults in here. I'm like, I'm going to do better. So
High school's not like that for everybody.
it's not at all, right?
So
What was your high school like, Mike?
let's just, without going into too much detail, I'm not going to go into the detail that you went into. I will say this, that all the struggles I have in life, I go back to high school and say, is this worse than high school? And if the answer is no, high school is still worse, then I say, then you can survive this.
Why was high school so bad?
Oh, it was horrible for me. Started off bad. So I lived in Long Beach, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Fairly popular kid. And then
You were fairly popular.
I was, because I was on the football team.
You don't have to lie for the
No, I was. I mean, there was this one time where, like, on game days, you would actually give the cheerleaders would make a little paper football with their number on it, and you're supposed to give it to your girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
or you could give your jersey to the girlfriend. So if you had a home game, you give your away jersey to your girlfriend, and she'd wear it that day. There was a time where one girl was wearing the little football and a different girl was wearing the jersey.
And they were all from your friend Tyler.
But so I went from that, and then we moved to Washington State in the middle of the 9th grade, which is still junior high for me.
Okay. Got pulled right out of your comfort zone, right out of your area.
Yeah. And so
You built up all your street cred.
yeah. And then my brother and sister are older, so they went straight to Redmond High School, and Redmond had lots of dollars. We were not lots of dollars people.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to junior high by
They don't
myself.
call them dollars in Vietnam. You had whatever you had.
Yeah, we were one bowl of rice people. So I went to junior high, so I had no family support at the junior high thing, and then I was this new guy. And Washington State is horrible about making connections.
Glad these guys took a break for 25 minutes and now they're back to upstairs.
Yeah. They couldn't find the leak, so I had to cut out another wall.
That guy is the epitome of emotion of the ocean up there. He is working with that micro penis. Yeah, that micro penis he's working with is getting it up there. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but shit.
Oh, man. Some guy is like sawing through the wall to get to a pipe leak inside the wall. That's our hypotheses.
Yeah, because I don't want to think about the alternative.
But so anyway, so I got to junior high. I was on my own, and Redmond Junior High had this stupid ass rotating schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So first period was always first period, but then the rest of the classes rotated every week. So maybe week 1 is first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Then week 2 is first, sixth, second, third, fourth, fifth.
I've heard of high schools that do this. I never understood the concept behind doing something like that.
It's to risk offending developmentally disabled people. It is sheer retardation. All right? It is, how can we prove to the world that we're dumber than all other people in the world?
Got it.
That's the purpose of it. All right? Because then I was like getting confused. It's like fourth period is the lunch period, and if you're in English, you had first lunch. If you're in a science class, it was second lunch. If you're in a history class, it was third lunch. I don't know. What if you're in math? Right? Well, that's a science. How is math a science?
Sounds extremely confusing.
It was extremely confusing. So I'm always every
Your
week.
stomach and asshole is confusing. You're like, when do I get my poop time and all this stuff? Like,
And so every week I'm embarrassed by something, right?
Mhm.
And it's hard to make friends. They call it the Seattle Freeze, where if you didn't know each other from kindergarten on up, you're not going to be in that friend group. So the only friend groups is the people that showed up to that school the same month that you did. That's going to be your friend group.
Interesting.
All right.
You know, not exactly the same, but I do kind of get it. Like, so that teacher group that I was talking about earlier, right? Most of those kids had been going to that school since they were in elementary school, because it was an elementary and middle school, and most of them has been friends since then. And that group is still great friends now. And I don't really, I see posts on Facebook or whatever, but I don't talk to them at all. But that same group all the way through, it wasn't the same like cutthroat, like what you're talking about, where like no one could be in this crowd if you didn't grow up together.
Mhm.
But I kind of get the whole like, A, we did move around quite a bit when I was younger, but B, like these friends groups, like they were their clique all the way through. Interesting though that Seattle has like a specific term for it.
Yeah, the Seattle Freeze. And then on top of that, I was Asian and unfamiliar, so people are like, what if he doesn't speak English? Because I was quiet. I'm
There's
observing.
nothing unfamiliar about Asians in Seattle.
Right. But here's the thing. It's like if a person talks to you and you don't speak English, then the person talking with you feels really embarrassed and they hate it, so they don't want to take the risk.
Right.
All right. And so I became very introverted. And I got bullied a little bit. And so I just kind of shrank into myself more. And that's why I started doing a lot more writing.
Mhm.
And that's all I did in class was write. I mean, I have arguments with the teachers who failed me in their class, and I'm like, what test did I fail? And it's like, let me check. You didn't fail any tests. All right, so why am I failing this class? You didn't do the homework. What's the point of the homework? To test, to show knowledge. No, the point of the homework is to teach the knowledge, and the test is to test the knowledge. If I pass the test, you pass me on this class.
Right.
That's not how it works. Well, I'm still not doing the homework. Well, you have to do the homework. It's like, I don't bring my home here. I'm not bringing here home.
Yeah.
All right. So I failed some classes. Hence, I had 2 senior years. And I really just did not fit in. And there's a lot of dark struggles. I mean, there was suicidal ideations.
Yeah.
Things of that. And it's getting dark now, but maybe somebody here it can help. I thought about suicide. I thought about death by cop in the school. Things of that nature.
Well, and I think the perspective that you're speaking from, like, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that go through that, especially in those years, right? And especially when you get pulled out of your comfort zone in a place that you've lived all your life and you've built this relationship with friends, this street cred, right? All of this stuff. And then all of a sudden you're ripped on a whole another part of the country, and it's like drop in and yeah.
And the teachers didn't do me any favors, because I was always trying to figure this out, and I was like, I got to make a better effort. And so like, I'm in this shell. I'm afraid, blah, blah, blah. I'll take a drama class. You would think that would help me get out of my shell, right? But this is where I think the teacher failed, is in the drama class, he didn't put peoples in groups. He just, everybody group up.
Right.
And so here I am, little Asian jackwagon sitting by himself again, until someone took pity on me, or he just said, King, you joined that group.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, right?
Oh, great.
You got this guy. Does he even speak? So that's why it was just so horrible. I made one friend in high school. That's it. It's all my friends from high school is Aaron.
Gotcha. So safe to say, your high school was nothing like that movie you made me watch.
My high school was very much like the movie I made.
Sorry, your experience in high school.
I was not part of
nothing.
those. I was not represented in that movie.
You were the girl, except you never went to the party.
So I wasn't even. I mean, I was smart, but I didn't have the grades. I mean, I had a 1.4 GPA at the end of my first senior year, and I raised it to 1.6 at the end of my second senior year.
Yeah, so about how tall you were, that's what your GPA was. Yeah. So okay, interesting. So, to give a little more background, right? So we each had to assign each other a movie,
Yeah.
and we had to watch it. Something that was either iconic or something that we watched a lot as, as kids or growing up. So obviously the movie that I had to watch was High School Musical. That's the one yeah, he was like, my school was just like this, all a big musical, and I was the lead, and yeah, you picked an interesting movie for me. No. So Mike's movie for me was Say Anything, which is this wonderful movie about a guy pressuring a girl to go to a party. No, just kidding. So bad example. Bad jokes. So no. So the whole concept of the movie is this guy really likes this girl. She's thought she was pretty, all of that stuff for years, right? And the girl is a super big tryhard, basically only focuses on her homework and her work and her future, and doesn't really do anything outside of those things. Doesn't really have any friends or anything like that. And he thinks she's super pretty and super smart, and so he works up the courage to ask her out to go to this basically senior year graduation party, right? It's one that this person holds every year. And this guy is known by a lot of kids, but he's not like super smart, like elite, like
Right.
all of these things that she's been working towards, right?
It was like the precursor to grunge.
Right, exactly. So I don't know what that is, but exactly. Anyway,
just before Nirvana.
they go to this party, and she really likes, he's weird, but she really likes how caring he is and all of these things, and how like respectful that he is and all this stuff. And he also has no plan for his life, right? So the father is just like not super approving of this guy, not against him, but just kind of like, like he's a fling, but he's not really gonna go anywhere in life, right? So really great movie. Really suggest anybody, Gen Z and all that good stuff, to take a watch. It'll give you a nice perspective of what Mike's high school was like, except what not Mike lived.
Yeah, so I got to observe it. Here's something weird, all right? And maybe it's a coping mechanism from trauma, but I actually remove high school and I insert junior high.
Oh, okay.
All right. So when people ask me about high school experience,
Let's talk about junior high.
I tend to go right to junior high first, and I have to remember, oh, wait, no, that was junior high.
Mm-hmm.
So my glory days are in junior high. Everybody else's is in high school. I'm not sure if that's good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have, we talked a little bit about what I did in high school, but I wouldn't call them glory days. I didn't do the whole, like, party thing, right? Like, in this movie. I didn't drink. I didn't do all of these crazy things. Okay, that's really sad. Thank you. Cool. Yeah, all right.
I remember going to school drunk for first period.
Well, that's extremely depressing. Sounds like you had a time.
Well, here's the funny thing, all right?
Is funny really the right word here?
It is, all right? The first time I quit drinking, I was 14 years old in Mississippi, but I was drinking because it was fun and something to do, and I was doing with my buddies.
Right.
Yeah. By high school, I was drinking first thing in the morning, hoping I would just pass out in school and not have to deal with it.
That's a perspective. Well, this movie's nothing like that.
So I love this movie. I do think it captures the 80s. The character Lloyd Dobler is the lead character. I'm not going to say my high school life was like his, but I can associate with the character and the personality.
Yeah, your dream of what you wanted high school to be like.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I knew people. I saw people like Lloyd Dobler,
Right.
and there were some people that were nice to me. Not a lot, but I mean, they were nice where they would see something that's not right and do something about it.
Right.
So
Yeah, which is kind of like the kind of person that
Exactly.
he is, right? Yeah. So basically, rest of the movie, they start falling in love, blah blah blah. The dad's basically like, no, you need to focus on your future. So she breaks up with him. They get into this huge fight. Her
dissed in the Malibu.
yeah, exactly. Just in the Malibu, broken up in his car, and then there's a side story going on where basically her dad is hemorrhaging money from old people, stealing all of their life savings and all of their plans.
Wasn't it shocking that he was guilty?
Yeah.
I was like not expecting him to actually be guilty.
So the girl and her dad had this amazing relationship, right? Like super trustworthy, super honest, whatever. They grew up really close. Her mom and dad got divorced, and she chose to live with her dad, which is not the common situation at all. Like, a great relationship. And then you kind of see the dad evolve in more of the movie, and you can kind of see the movie start to turn him into more of like the villain, right? And then you find out at the end, very close to the end, that he's guilty for stealing all these old people's money in this retirement home that he's running.
Right.
Has a whole bunch of cash, tries to justify like, oh, I did it all for you, I did it all for us, yada yada, whatever. Goes to jail. Basically, long story short, they end up together, right? Spoiler alerts for a movie that's been out for 40 years now, or whatever. they end up together and it all works out great. But yeah, so it was an interesting perspective and interesting to see. Like, I appreciate that you showed me something that kind of gives a good idea of like what that time period was like, things that were going on, what people were driving, just stuff like that.
I think it captured a lot of the types of people in high school.
Yeah, I appreciate the beginning of where he shoves in the cassette and it stops working, so he's got to stick something under it to get it work. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I like the old video game cartridges where it's not working, you pull out, you have to blow into it
out, or like a good if you guys don't know what cassettes are, a good reference is like trying to get the headphone wire in the right space and like wrapping it up so you can listen. So yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was a really good movie, and I thought it showed an interesting perspective. It was super pixelated. Jesus Christ. My God. After going from 4K to whatever I was watching,
720, 360.
Yeah, 365, 9, I don't know, whatever it was, 1.2. It's ridiculously pixelated, but it was a good movie. I watched it on Amazon Prime. Yeah, it was perfectly fine. It was really weird because it was just the beginning of the movie, and then it got better, and then there would be certain scenes where I'm like, my God. I was like, I'm not wearing my glasses, and I'm like, wait, I have contacts on. I don't know what the hell's happening right now.
Sounds like a Prime problem or an internet problem.
I don't know. But overall, good movie.
All right, so how did that high school that you saw in that movie, how different was it from what you pictured in your mind of like, what would a 1980s?
It was exactly like I expected.
Really?
Yeah. It was exactly how I expected. Extremely different from my high school, but my high school, as I explained earlier, was not the normal high school. I didn't grow up with the normal high school life. I think that normal, like, public high school and just the normal shit wasn't the same, right? But similar in that, like, you had these cliques, you had people that were going to like the parties and drinking, and like they really cared a lot about their cars and like shit like that. I didn't go through that in high school, so I don't really have anything to compare it to in my own life.
I was in this class in high school. Totally totally fabricated, created by these two teachers for people like me. I got recruited to this class. It was called It's called WIT. It stood for What I Think, because they felt that there's smart kids that just weren't applying themselves and were struggling for non-education related reasons, that just needed a forum where they could express themselves so that they can feel more comfortable and excel in the education.
Yeah, with a bullet.
And so I'm in this class, and this is actually how I met my best friend. I'm in this class. I had this design where I was always 3 minutes late to class.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I had a special route through the hallways to get to my class 3 minutes late.
Mm-hmm.
So I show up, and there's this dude in the far corner of the room where I normally sit, and the teachers are talking, and I open the door to go in. The teachers don't even hear me.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks up and he sees me, and he makes eye contact with me, right? He sees me, and I look at him because he's in my spot, and he says, "A little late, aren't you?" And then everybody looks at me, the teachers look at me, and I was like, what a dick.
You bastard.
So I sat right next to him. He was like, what a dick.
Yeah, like, got you now, you're with the weird kid.
Right. So, but that's how we ended up meeting and becoming friends. But in this class, there was this girl, and she got to talk with the counselors and that kind of stuff. And it was like, she was all fake suicidal because she got caught having sex with the PK, the pastor's kid, right, by her parents in her living room at her house. And the parents told her she can't take the Mercedes to school anymore. She has to take the Mustang. And so she's just going to end her life.
You got to take the Ford.
Yeah. And then I got in trouble when she was talking about it. And I was like, Jesus Christ, just shut up and do it. You know, if that's your biggest problem and you can't handle it, you know, let freaking evolution take its place.
Yeah, they frown upon telling kids to kill themselves.
But yeah, that was.
But she definitely should.
I was like, dear Lord in heaven. But yeah, so I did get to express myself in that classroom where I had like, God, Redmond High School would have these stupid bulletins. They have like the positive thought of the day, and the teacher of this class insisted on reading it. Remember, every gray cloud has a silver lining, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to Mike and Aaron and Mike's positive thought of the day. Remember, every silver lining has a gray cloud. You know, your dog hates you, and so do we. Junk like that. So we got to express ourselves, and she let all of them go except for the time where I said, die and do us all a favor. She said, you need to erase that one.
Yeah, you can't write that. Oh, man. High school years, becoming a man. So, I gave you an interesting movie about becoming a man.
You did?
I know you avoided talking about it. I saw it there. You were like,
oh, God,
I'm going to bring it up.
Yeah. SpongeBob Rectangular Pants.
I think that's what they're calling the movie now.
Yeah, SpongeBob SquarePants, the movie. So I get it. Becoming a man. Not my favorite movie.
Just a shock for words, huh?
Yeah, it's not my favorite. I get the concept, but I know you talked about how many memes are coming out, but I didn't watch it from how can I make a meme out of this perspective. I was like, this movie flirts with humor, but doesn't quite go all in on it. All right. It plays with, it kind of like, it tells a story of, so SpongeBob is this kid that works at a cafe, and they're opening a new one, and he thinks he's going to become the manager of this new one, and he's finally going to get to rule the cafe and do all the things he wanted to do and implement all the ideas that he had and blah, blah, blah. And the owner gives it to this other one and said, you're just a kid. You can't do this. And I get that. You know, I completely understand how that could be appealing. And so then they go off on this big adventure to rescue the king's crown.
Yep,
and
because he's bald.
And become
it's a
because
big deal.
He's bald.
Right.
Which is a big deal in the movie. Personally, my last name is King. I take the stolen crown very seriously.
Yeah.
All right.
Bald is bad.
Bald is bad.
Mhm.
That's why
It blinded everybody. He couldn't be king without his crown.
Right. And so he had to wear this
king's
paper
cheese,
bag
if
over
you
his
will.
head, up to his eyebrows.
Yep.
And so SpongeBob says, "I'll go to the crevice of darkness," or whatever it was called, and rescue your crown, because that's where it is, because this other guy who didn't steal it knows it's there, right? So there's a lot of suspending of, belief involved here. It's like suspending logic is probably what I should say. So SpongeBob and his starfish friend McGillicuddy. What?
Yeah, McGillicuddy. That's exactly what his name is.
What is his name again?
Patrick Star.
Yeah, there we go. Same difference. They go on this journey to go and rescue the crown. Now
They had to be very specific for the kids. You have Eugene Krabs, Mr. Krabs, Squidward, Patrick Star, SpongeBob SquarePants. They're really easy to keep track of. Sponge, the star guy.
Okay. Sponge and Star went on this adventure to go get the crown.
Mhm.
Right. And the guy who actually stole the crown knows they're after it, so he's hired some guy to go and kill him off, which is a great storyline for children. It's like, hey, somebody out there in the world is going to pay to have you killed someday. So this guy's out there to try to squish him. And so they're trying to avoid that guy, and then they end up in like some biker bar, and
They play with bubbles.
they play with bubbles, and they can't.
I don't see why the story doesn't make sense to you. It's really easy to follow. The guy steals the crown, and away.
Then they finally get to the crevice, and they look over the edge. Too far. We're not gonna make it. We're just kids. Never mind. Screw all this. And then Princess Fedora shows up. And what's her name?
Yeah, Princess Mindy. She shows up. Patrick's there rolling around. He tripped because his pants fell down, and he's just got this. SpongeBob points out he's been wearing the same Goofy Goober underpants for the past 3 weeks, and she pops up and she's like, "Oh my God, it's Mindy!"
Yeah, and she casts a magic spell to turn them into men,
Turn
like
them
you
into
go get
men.
the crown,
Mm-hmm.
which really was just close your eyes. I'm going to take the seaweed and shove it on your face, and it's going to magically stick there like a mustache.
Right, exactly.
And if you have a mustache, therefore you are a man.
Yep.
Hence the man in man.
Exactly. I'm a man now. I was boy. Now I have terrible mustache. I'm man.
So then they start doing the adventuresome things that they believe men do, and they go get the crown.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And there were some obstacles they had to luck out of. And
They
overcome.
really lucked out of them.
Yeah.
They didn't really do anything. They just kind of luck out of it.
And then in the end, I think this is actually kind of true for millennials and maybe Gen Z, but Gen Z is just barely entering their manhood stages because they're so young still. They get the crown, they bring it back to the king, and it's like, "You're right, you should have been the manager." And they're like, "No, we did the man thing, didn't like it. We just want to be kids." So it brought me all the way back to this whole meme or phrase where it's like, adulting is hard. And the last thing millennials want to do is anything that's hard.
Yep. So,
Did I sum it up?
yeah, you summed it up perfect. You got every aspect of the movie correct. So really, I just wanted to show you that movie. It honestly has nothing to do with anything except just the fact that Gen Z loves meme culture. We had this show that was absolutely ridiculous at every waking moment that it was on. And we took all of these memes from it, and that is like our culture. That's the way that, we talk, act, whatever. It probably explains a lot of our issues. And yeah, so I just wanted to show you something that was super iconic. Doesn't really mean anything. It's just ridiculously iconic for Gen Z. Really just helped define a whole generation of kids.
So, do you
And it influenced my everyday life when I was going through middle school and high school.
What stage of life did you face your biggest obstacle and overcome it? Let's add that in there.
To be honest with you, I would say, so I'm trying to think of like the right way to answer your question. So let me be clear. Like, biggest obstacle in life or biggest obstacle in like career wise or
Just
like
like
job wise or just general?
Your life, any aspect of it,
Yeah.
where you went up against it and, you know, you had choices to make, right? Overcome it, go a different direction, crawl up in a ball, suck your thumb.
Yeah.
You know.
So two key moments come up, right, for me when 2 to 3 when we talk about this. So one was when I was in college. One of my best friends in college, he did the thing that you were fantasizing about in high school. He killed himself, right? He took a bullet to his head on one of the bridges on school grounds. And that was, me and one other friend knew that he was going through what he was going through. He had been, manic for months up into this point. He was having issues, cutting, made multiple like plans that we essentially like foiled, right? Like we found out about, stopped him, had sent him for help, like all of these things, right? And it was kind of that moment where we realized like he made the choice he wanted to make, because all the other moments he made it too easy for himself to get caught, right? In this moment, there was, unless we literally went and like burglar searched his room, he wasn't going to get caught, right? He stopped showing the depressive side of himself, faked that he was taking his medication, faked that he was still going to therapy, gave himself good alibis for like doing those things, and faked all the right things, right, to get people to lay off just a little bit to do what he did, right? Okay. Going through that was something that will be a defining moment in my life forever, right? It's one of those things where until you experience something similar, it's not the same. It was really the first moment that somebody ridiculously important in my life died. That was kind of like that first defining moment, like somebody that I love and really care about is now just gone. So getting through that and working through that, still being in school, and I was taking engineering classes. Like after that, I started failing classes left and right, or not really failing, but like barely scraping by, like D's. My GPA tanked. I wasn't doing well. I still had my job, like slacking off in my job, all of those things, all these things that I worked like really hard for years, just all kind of took a big hold. And I was really like slacking off and things like that. So basically my decision, kind of like what you were talking about, was I had to make some hard decisions about where I was at in my life. So I was engaged at the time. And I just realized that I didn't have the mental and emotional strength to try and support myself as well as be able to be in a loving relationship. I wasn't loving at the moment. I was extremely angry at everything that was going on. So I decided it was better for me and the other person to just part and go separate ways. And then I also had to make decisions to pull myself out of it, because I knew that I was going to wreck my future if I didn't, right? And another defining, I guess, key moment that came out of that, I met the right people through his family that actually set me up for the career that I have now. So lots of pivotal changes that put me where I'm at now. Without him doing what he did, I would not be in the career that I'm in now. It wasn't even a thought at the time, or even like a path that I was considering. So that was one of like the key the key pivotal moments in my life where my decisions that I made and the people that I met through that situation completely changed the path that I'm on right now.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can think of a few, but that's like my really key one. Sure, we'll get into the others in other episodes.
Yep.
What about you?
I have two things. One of them is deciding not to do what your friend did.
Yeah, that's a pivotal moment.
All right.
I think we wouldn't be on this podcast talking about it if you did.
So deciding not to do that was definitely a pivotal. It's like rural for you. Pivotal moment.
Yeah, the only one.
I managed to flip the switch in my head from going from an inferiority complex to a superiority complex.
Mm-hmm.
I decided in my mind that I wasn't the problem. Everybody else was the problem. And therefore, I shouldn't do anything to me because they're the problem. So screw those people. And then I just started acting better than everybody else. That didn't go over real well, except for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what I needed to be at the time because I could either be really high or really low.
Right.
And I had to figure out the middle from there. And I wasn't getting anywhere from here.
Right.
So I went too high and then had to go through my ego checks and calm down to a mostly even keel.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is average, I think I managed to get myself down to right here, just above average. All right. And then the second point that was pivotal was deciding to go back to school. So I was actually in the car with my dad in the parking lot to take my GED.
Okay.
And I was sitting there. I didn't even open the door. I just kind of looked at him and he looked at me and I said, you know what? Let's scrap this. Let's just enroll me in school again.
Gotcha. So rather than, and that's, I'm assuming where the second year of
That's where the second year,
right? Because, yeah, and
so I went to Woodinville High School. So my first high school was Redmond High School.
Mm-hmm.
My parents moved to Woodinville, and so I enrolled into Woodinville High School, and I chose to make that a fresh start. I made a measurement of the behaviors that I did at Redmond High School that was unsuccessful.
Mm-hmm.
And all the introverted things that prevented me from making friends. And I said, I'm going to scrap this. I'm going to do these. I'm going to put myself out in front of people.
Yeah.
So instead of
chose to take the harder route rather than just taking the easy way.
Instead of sitting in the corner at the library waiting for first bell, I actually sat in the hallway listening to my headphones because that's what we had back then. You know? Where people could actually talk with me and ask me what I'm listening to.
Right.
And so I deliberately made myself vulnerable, talked with people, and it worked out really well. It was a good experience that second senior year. So if anything for me, if I had to say anything in that experience, it would have to be more towards my second senior year,
right,
which was more like that, but still kind of different,
right?
Because I didn't have all the years of time
build up,
so that's because making that decision gave me my pride back, showed me that I could be successful, and gave me reason and purpose to apply myself and try harder.
Yeah. So I think the point is, because two completely different experiences, right? Two completely different moments, but you can make good decisions in your shitty situation.
Absolutely. And so, and I asked this question originally because SpongeBob did the man things, right? And then they had the opportunity to run the restaurant like he thought he wanted and decided he wanted to be a kid again. All right. I didn't like that message. Like, when you make the tough decisions that a man has to make and become a man, don't change your mind into saying, oh, being an adult is too hard.
want to clarify something. Did you watch the very end of the movie?
Yeah.
Okay, because at the end he's like, Mr. Krabs like, oh, I think we all know who that manager badge belongs to, and then he was like, oh, well, I think I have something to say, Mr. Krabs, and then Squidward stepped in and was like, I think this long journey has just made you realize like what you thought you wanted is what you didn't want, and all of these things. And then SpongeBob's like, no, I was just gonna tell you that your fly was down, manager. This is the greatest day of my life, and he like took it. So he did take the job.
I thought he didn't.
Well, it's okay. Yeah, he did take it.
Okay. Well, then never mind then. For some reason, it just didn't register with me. Probably because I made it too light.
Well, it was super light and super like jokey at the end. That was kind of the whole point. But they did like hit the whole scene right before that was about like enjoying your time as a kid and all of that. His like musical and all of that stuff. That was like the whole message. This was just the last part. So I can completely understand like that being the perspective that it gave right at the end of the movie, because that's what the end song was all about, right?
Right.
So,
all right. I feel a little bit like a jackass still, but thanks for the out.
No, completely makes sense. Also, it's SpongeBob. There's nothing to take from that movie. That movie does not have to be deep whatsoever.
It's in the ocean. It is deep.
Oh, man. Alrighty. Well, I think we're running up on time.
Absolutely. Since we did stumble into this suicide thing, I just want to say one thing. Don't do it. And there's now a hotline 988. Right. So there's 911 for emergencies, for suicide, 988. Use it. I'm very glad. I have a great life, and I've been able to make positive impacts on other people. And I'm just glad I did do it. And I've known people who have committed suicide, and I've known people who've been impacted by other people who've committed suicide. It's a very selfish decision. It's very cowardly, and you do so much harm.
Yep. And it's not to yourself.
Yeah.
As much as you think that it is.
All the people that you care about, that you think, they're better off without you, you hurt them so much.
Yeah.
So 988, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yep, agreed. Couldn't have said it better myself. Alrighty, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Appreciate you guys. And yeah, don't kill yourself.
Peace be the journey.